Hello and welcome to episode 141 of MMO Weekly, presented as always by Chitty's Cheesesteaks. I'm your host, Sal Manzo, joined by Matthias Altman Kirasaki and Chris Bello, friends of the program as always. Guys, the last time we spoke, the Mets were bad, and as we're speaking now, the Mets are still pretty bad. They had, and we talked about it off camera, they finished their road trip 5-4. They started at 5-2. Obviously, they blew those last two games to the Rockies. Or the Diamondbacks, I should say, in the end of the road trip. But there was some things to like. The offense had a couple of spurts. Mark Vientos had good games here and there. Juan Soto with his first leadoff homer during that stretch. Carson Bench is looking better. A guy that at this point you should be running out there every single day so we can get his growing pains. But, again, guys like Shormanaya continue to struggle. Pitching has been pretty good, but overall, this offense just continues to sputter. You get a game or two here and there where they can kind of put something together, but overall, just struggling mightily. We know there's injuries, but it's been like this all year. This isn't anything new. So just kind of more of the same, I guess, from the Mets here. We spoke about it before. The Mets are the only team on pace to lose 100 games right now as it stands. And they have the highest payroll in baseball. So go figure, right? Just kind of one of those weird years, I guess, or just not a well-constructed team. But I just want to get your thoughts real quick on just like recapping the road trip. And then we'll talk about an announcement that the Mets just made also that hopefully maybe it'll help the Mets offense a little bit.
Yeah, I would say the 5-4 road trip is acceptable. They've over the last 2 weeks since the last time we recorded, they've gone 6-6, which is kind of, it could be way worse. It's also not, great if you're trying to make up ground here. To point things out, like you were saying, Sal, they have a 2.71 ERA in May. That's fourth best in the majors. On the flip side, they have a 75 WRC plus in May. That's fifth worst in the majors. And, the rotation, I think, has started to take shape. You got, Peralta, McLean, and Holmes with Christian Scott, who's looked solid. And then this, awkward kind of bullpen game, but David Peterson's been much better out of the bullpen. He has a 1.69 ERA as a reliever. I know Shormanaya has continued to struggle, but, Devin Williams has started to look more like himself, 6 straight scoreless outings. Luke Weaver's looked a little bit more like himself. Brooks Raley is still Brooks Raley. But, to add on to the offense thing, they're especially bad against lefties right now. They're 1-9 against lefties. And, you look at the way the lineup is constructed with a left-hander on the mound. You have Austin Slater, guy who they picked up 2 weeks ago, who had been released by the Marlins. He's batting in the middle of the lineup against the lefty. Look, I'm not Austin Slater for the past few years has been a decent, role player at the major league level, but he right now in 2026 is not a 3 or 4 hitter on any major league club. They're 3-9 in 1-run games. A lot of times it's as soon as they fall behind, the offense just takes a lot of, less than stellar at bats. And they're also 0-14 in games in which they've scored 2 or fewer runs, which you've done it 14 times already. That's not great. I know at one point they were like over 50% on that, but they are hitting into some bad luck. And I think we saw this especially on Saturday in Arizona. I mean, you saw Mark Vientos fly out to the fence. We saw Mark Vientos hit 2 balls in Colorado that would have been gone in every stadium but Coors Field. This month in particular, their expected slugging percentage is .410, but their real slugging percentage is .336, which is 25th in the majors. The .410 is 11th in the majors, and they're third in barrel rate too. And they're not hitting the ball on the ground as much, but they're just not getting the results. But there are some positives to take away. Like I said, pitching has been much better. Carson Bench, 852 OPS over his last 16 games, but they need to do a lot more than just be 500 from here on out. They have to. At least the goal for the rest of the month should be at least to get within 5 games of 500. I don't know if that's asking too much. And then, as you get healthier, you have 3 middle of the order bats on the IL currently. But once you get healthier, you should start seeing that record improve ideally.
Yeah, 5-4 in the grand scheme of things is an okay road trip. But they put themselves in this position where you look at this part of the schedule, you really needed that 6-3 stretch. Because 5-4 and 6-3 might not seem like a big difference, but we're talking about getting 3 games in the standings as opposed to just 1 game in the standing. And right now, when you look ahead to the schedule, yes, they're facing the Tigers without Kerry Carpenter, and Tarek Skubal is down right now. but you face a tough Tigers team coming up next. You've got a Subway Series at Citi Field where if they win one game, I'll be happy because of how bad their offense has been. And then after that, they go to play DC in the Nationals, which they struggled against at home. And then they got to go to Miami, which they never play well there. So you're coming up into this part of the schedule where, sure, 5-4 is fine. You went above 500 and you won 2 series on the road, but you really needed that 6-3 record. And we went back to that bad luck on Saturday. And that was really the game where I felt they needed to get. Sure, they had, I think, 7 of the 8 hardest hit balls in that entire game. A couple coming, again, from Mark Vientos, where one was a ground out. And I think we all thought that other one was going to be a home run to tie the game in the 9th inning. But I think at this point, you kind of shrug your shoulders and you take the 5-4. The one thing I will say about the Austin Slaters and the Andy Ibanezes of the world is I think we've all come to a point in the season now where you know what this team is offensively. You know you're not getting a lot out of Austin Slater and Andy Ibanez. You've got to just play the best defensive lineup out there. Put Brett Beatty at third base. Get Bo Bichette at shortstop for now. Hopefully somebody comes to alleviate him and eventually move him back to second because Ibanez at third base making 2 errors. And also not being able to record a hit in the Mets uniform. Because at the end of the day, you can't point to 2 errors and say that's the game. But the margin of error is so small right now. You can't lose a game because Andy Ibanez makes 2 errors.
Yeah, no, agreed, right? You know, these guys that are going to have to play majority of the stretch with these, you know, your big guys out. You know, you can't underperform and give away easy plays, give away extra outs like you're talking about, especially if they're really not going to be offensive threats, so to speak. So it's just kind of speaks to just what we're seeing so far with this team in general, right, this year. And just talk about gaining ground. I mean, you know, forget about 6-3. You got to be stacking. You know, you have to go through a month plus stretch where you're winning every series. If not 4 out of 5 series at a clip. That's the only way you're going to get any ground, right? 500 balls is going to keep you at 10 games under 500, and you're selling this team come into July. They need to, I don't know if it's in them. I don't really believe that it is as of what we've seen now. But, you know, if they're going to make a push, they got to just start stacking series wins. The last few years when the Mets have been good, even up until, you know, before June of last year, it felt like every 5th series they'd lose a series, but they were stacking series wins. And that's how you kind of start, you know, forget pulling ahead, but pulling yourself out of this hole. So remains to be seen if they can do that. Like you said, you know, they kind of struggle in DC against the Nats, and the Marlins are always a pain in their side, and they're playing much better this year too. So that'll be interesting. But the Mets are going to have, I don't know if I'm going to say help, so a rescue, but the Mets are calling up one of their big prospects. AJ Ewing is going to be coming up. That got announced right before we were going to tape here. One of the Mets' bigger prospects, obviously someone they held on to in the trade for Freddie Peralta. Think really highly of him. So, you know, we'll see what happens. Again, you know, I think back to the pitchers last year when the Mets were on their stretch, you know, with McClain and Tong and Sprout, and outside of McClain, right? Or in general, asking those guys, rookies, to carry the load on a pennant push was not a fair thing to do, right? You can't really expect a lot of success out of that. So I think the same thing kind of rings true here, right? AJ Ewing is not a savior. For even if he was the top prospect in baseball, it was Connor Griffin. I would say the Mets still need a lot of help. But hopefully, you know, a guy that's young, seems to be athletic, has some speed, some pop, hopefully injects a little life, right? That's all you can hope for at this point. Wherever they can capture a little lightning in a bottle, hopefully you can come here with some enthusiasm and kind of just, you know, give this team a shot in the arm, because they still feel like they're sleepwalking. I don't know how else to put that.
Yeah, I mean, this, like you were saying, he just needs to be a spark plug here, really. Just inject some life into this lineup that has been so disappointing this year. He is a 961 OPS between AA and AAA this year. He has more walks than strikeouts, 22 walks to 20 strikeouts. He's 17 for 18 in steals. He stole 70 bases last year. He can play all 3 outfield positions, and he can play second base. So I probably look at him mostly playing center field, with Benj sliding to right and Soto sliding to left, and, you know, swapping in and out, DHing. Mm-hmm. And to Chris's point about defense, that would be probably the best defensive outfield you can trot out right now. And it gives them a lot of athleticism, more youth. He's only 21. And it'll be exciting to sort of see him and Benj try to, bring this offense back to life. We were talking about how Benj has started to look alive lately. I think Ewing, even if he struggles a little bit, I mean, it's nice to have a guy who's athletic, who's fast, who can get on base, steal some bags. Like he's checking all the boxes. I feel like, other than the power of what this team needs right now. Does this make me a little concerned we're not going to see Luis Robert for a while? Yeah, a bit. I mean, Robert has a herniated disc in his back, or herniation in the disc of his lumbar. Like, that is a serious injury, and he probably is out for an extended period of time. And look, if this means Ewing gets to play for a while, I think this is a good idea. I know he's a left-handed hitter, and this team has struggled against lefties, but I mean, I think at this point it can't hurt to call him up. I was thinking maybe they call up Ryan Clifford soon too to help out at first base, but I think it's, if it were later in the year and the team were still in nosedive, or they were in a situation like last year, I'd say this is way riskier. But I think right now it can't hurt to give the kid some run.
Yeah, I'm excited for AJ Ewing to come up. I think the big factor in his game is going to be the walks, as you alluded to, Matthias, because when you look at his AA standards, 447 on base percentage. You go to AAA, he's kind of struggled a little bit in his last 4 or 5 games. He's taken a couple of 0-4s, but he's got a 392 OBP over in AAA as well. So the Mets need people who can get on base. You go and you look at the team OPS, you look at even worse. I think they're the Giants right now for last 7 on base percentage. They just need competitive. At least is going to come up and hopefully get acclimated quickly and give you those competitive at bats. Going road stretch, I one had said on the broadcast that the Mets had 11 plus stretches and retired 10 times in a row in a lineup, and it's unacceptable. It can't happen. And is one guy going to fix that? No, but it at least gives you another option in the lineup to have a competitive at bat and to get on base. I don't know where he's going to play. If, like Matthias probably says, it's going to be center field. If they need to get Marcus Semien off of his feet, he can go and play second base. He can play a little bit in the infield. So we'll see how Carlos Mendoza plugs and plays AJ Ewing, but it's just going to be another option. And he's one of the very few options that the Mets have, because you don't know when Jorge Polanco's coming back. Like you said, Matthias, you don't know when Robert Jr. is coming back. We all know Francisco Lindor is going to be out for an extended period of time. So unless they're making a trade, this is probably the one guy who can come up and impact the team right now.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is a fair comparison here, but I remember when the Braves did something similar like this in 2022 when they called up Michael Harris, and the team was sort of struggling, and he came up and like completely revitalized that lineup. I'm not saying Ewing isn't come up and be rookie of the year the way Michael Harris was, but it can't hurt to give a guy like this a shot in the majors.
No, and hopefully it gives opportunities to guys like Bo Bichette to have some runners on and to hit his way out of it, because you've seen Mark Vientos start to turn things around. Brett Beatty can get plugged into the lineup and hopefully turn things around. And it just gives you another name to take pressure off of the other guys who aren't hitting, because we saw Mark Vientos come out of it. Juan Soto was struggling a little, coming home will help. And then you cross your fingers with guys like, Tyrone Taylor to give you a little bit of something, and MJ Melendez to continue hitting at the pace he was hitting on the road.
Yeah, no, agreed. I would like to see Ryan Clifford up here too, and that was a good point by you, Matthias. It's just, Vientos is starting to hit now. Agreed, but it's kind of just been a revolving door at first base. If Clifford can give them a little stability there, and I think he's at least rated as a better defender than I would think Vientos is at first. So you talk about, defense wise, that would make sense. And, you can mix Vientos in at third base, you make him in, at DH, you could mix him in Soto, at DH when you need there. So just length, right? And also just seeing what you need to see what you have. I keep going back to that. Just, I want the Mets to obviously win stack series on series and turn this thing around and be the 2019 Nationals. But, kind of logic says that it might not happen for them. So at the very least, I want them to see what these young players have. In the case of Benj, I hope he gets, if it's possible, get him 800 at-bats this year. I hope he does not skip a day. Let him fail up here. All right. He's playing better at late, especially at the plate. He looks a lot more comfortable. You mentioned that OPS is much higher the last bunch of games than it was to start the year. He looks like he's getting more and more comfortable now as the season is going on. So hopefully that's a positive out of this, right? He can kind of take his lumps this year and when the Mets are hopefully competitive again years after that, he's learned from this and made it better. But it's just it's a weird spot. It's a weird spot to say the team has the highest payroll in the sport, but look at what the lineup is going to be consistent of now, right? Unproven prospects that you're going to hope inject some life and some offense into it. So weird spot for them to be in. Just kind of feels like I guess I just keep going back to first base, and you knew you had Pete Alonso, man. 30 to 40 and 100 to 120, and he played every day. He made some bad throws. You'd get annoyed, but he played every day. It was a position you didn't have to worry about. And I felt that way from, when he left the first time to this past off season, be careful what you wish for sometimes, because a position you really didn't have to think about for 7 years is now, Vientos is playing better, but there's now buts to all this, right? It was supposed to be Jorge Polanco, but he's hurt. It's kind of just been matchup by matchup how they're doing it, but just disappointing spot to be in. It's just none of these guys are going to get younger. Soto's not getting younger. Lindor's not getting younger. You wonder about this window and the decisions that were made to try and raise that window back up. And, did they make the right decisions as of right now? This is all on Stearns. This is his team. It's his makeup. This is what you ask for when, team doesn't make the playoffs like last year, but it's feeling as of right now that certain players that were subtracted from don't seem to be the issue. So I don't know. I just, I hope they play better. It would make the Manzo minutes a heck of a lot better if they were winning a lot more. They kind of just feel like obituaries after every night. But just a shot in the arm. That's something. Hopefully AJ Ewing can be that. Like you guys said, if he could be Michael Harris from 2021, awesome. Because then the Mets are going to win the World Series, it sounds like. But remains to be still a lot of pressure to put on a young guy. I guess that's what I just keep going back to. You can't ask, players like that to be the savior. All they can do is maybe take a little pressure off of some of these guys with names that aren't hitting, but we'll see. I guess I want to pivot with all that being said. We talked a little bit trade rumors, should the Mets try to add? Are they going to subtract? That all goes to me. They start stacking some series and can get Claw to 500, by Memorial Day's 2 weeks from now, a little bit after Memorial Day, right? The middle of June. If they can get to that point, then you can see. But I know there was floated out there the idea of maybe they trade for a Trevor Story. I don't love that. I think of a team like the Giants. Maybe you take a chance on Rafael Devers or Willie Adames. You can try to swap contracts to see if they'll take Simeon's bad contract. But I just want to get your thoughts. I don't see them adding. I don't see it. I think all the short-term deals are out of here, but let me know what you guys think. Yeah.
Definitely not Trevor Story. I'll just say it. Story's got that salary, and he's been one of the worst hitters in baseball. We talk about the struggles that the Mets have had with their offense. He's literally been worse than every single one of them. So no on Trevor Story. The Giants, I honestly, one of their right-handed bats, maybe either Adames or Matt Chapman, it could be worth it, especially because Chapman, I know he had that whole thing with Casey Schmidt early this season, but he's still a very good defensive third baseman. I don't know if the Mets need a third baseman right now, but it couldn't hurt. But the reality is right now, I don't see them trading for a guy like that or any of these guys. I don't see Rafael Devers coming over either, or Jung-Hoo Lee. Those contracts, I guess if I would rather pick up one of those compared to one of the Red Sox contracts like Story. But as of right now, I think God, I hate to keep pushing like the boundaries on when you need them to turn around by, but I would say, a month. I guess at this point, give it a month. If they're really struggling by the middle of June, we've already seen some players get dealt. The Giants already traded Patrick Bailey, a former top prospect who is still one of the best defensive catchers in baseball, got traded already. I think if they're still struggling by the middle of next month, we're probably going to see some deals start coming together. But on the flip side, if they're getting closer to that 500 mark, maybe you see them start to buy a little bit. I don't know if this team is necessarily one where if they really getting back into contention, they're going to go all in and, mortgage the farm. I don't see that necessarily, but I think if you start to see them get back into playoff contention, I know that's kind of, an expansive thing right now with the, 6 teams in each league making the playoffs. But if it looks like they're within striking distance, I would expect Stearns to be a bit more aggressive in trying to add to the team. Whereas if they're, like I said, if they're still 10 under 500 this point next month, then yeah, they probably do start selling off.
It's such an interesting predicament that they're in right now, because if you don't do anything now, assuredly when everybody comes back, you'll be out of it and you'll have to sell everybody off. But if you want to give yourself a chance to be in it when everybody comes back, you need to make a move right now. And I don't know if that move is out there, because as you alluded to, Trevor Story has been just abysmal this season. When you look at go and trade for a job, well, he hasn't been that great. So Santana, maybe from the backs, he hasn't either. And then you try to find a team that fits the Mets, and there isn't a lot out there. So it would have to be something creative like a Rafael Devers or maybe a Willie Adames. You go up and down. The move that is right there that makes the most sense for me is probably Christian Walker. The Houston Astros have gone through so many injury bugs. They are 16 and 26. They are going out of it. There is no way they are going to catch the Rangers and the Mariners, who are going to get healthy, and even the Athletics right now, who are in first place. So if there was any move to make right now, I'd be calling up the Houston Astros saying, do you want to get rid of this contract? Do you want a fringe top 10 prospect of ours? And then just bring in a right-handed hitter who can at least hit 20 home runs the rest of the way through. But outside of Christian Walker, I don't really see anybody that fits this team, because there are a whole lot of great teams in the NL Central, and the American League is so bad right now that even if you are under 500, by the time June, July comes around, you could be 3 games out of a wild card.
Yeah, no, and it's crazy to just, you mentioned Matthias, how it's 12 teams make the playoffs. So really just a good stretch of baseball should put you back into that hunt at least. You don't know. I don't know if you're going to see that. And to also to your points, even if they do start playing back, are they going to go all in? No, I don't think so, because they really don't seem to have the talent to go all in and make a deep run anyway. Maybe they'll just add more. So you kind of act like you're getting additions back from the guys who are getting healthy. And you kind of act like those are, deadline acquisitions in themselves or whatever. But it's interesting. I don't know. I didn't think the Mets were trading for anyone in 2019. They ended up trading for Marcus Stroman. Remember when that happened? That was kind of out of the blue. It depends on what happens the next month. If by the middle of June, they're just scuffling, barely playing 500 baseball, and they're still, 9-10 games under 500. There's no reason to be, making hasty trades, trading another, Pete Crow Armstrong for Javi Baez kind of thing. You don't want to make anything hasty to jeopardize your future, especially if you're not making any pushes. So I don't know. The next month is going to be very interesting. Carlos Mendoza seemingly is not going anywhere till after the year. Whether they give him a new contract or not is a different thing, but I imagine that once they gave that vote of confidence that he's going to, kind of stick through the year. But, you run out of ways to inject life into this team. So hopefully some of these young guys can do it.
It's going to be interesting to see how they do over the course of May, because you talk about June and we start to go through these teams they're playing. Well, once June rolls around, they open with the Mariners in Seattle. They go back out west. Then they play the Padres. Then they take on the Cardinals, who look like they've come a year early. And then they face the Braves for the first time. Then they go to Cincinnati and play the Reds. Then they have to go in June on Father's Day and play the Phillies. So if figure this out now by Memorial Day and say that they're 10 to 15 games under 500 by June, that they start playing playoff caliber teams. So that's why I kind of go back to that point of, if you're going to make a move and if you're going to resurrect this, play the Marlins 6 times who are really scuffling. Do it when you're playing these bottom tier team Tigers who have good and they're missing players. Do it when you're going to face a Yankees team that is still, even though they've been one of the best teams in baseball, they're missing 2 of their best pitchers. If there's going to be any urgency to save 2026, it's now or never, which you hate to do before June even rolls around, but it really is true. This schedule is not easy for them. And then I didn't even mention they end June again with the Philly Cubs. Yeah, I mean, if they don't do anything now in May, I mean, we could be looking at a month, and we've seen them before in June where they go 6-20.
I mean, to continue off that, after facing the Phillies, they face the Phillies 6 times. Then they also have to face, right after that, they have to face the Blue Jays in Toronto, and then 4 in Atlanta. So that's going to be a gauntlet. Starting from about June 1st, because let's be real, I know the Mariners have kind of been underwhelming so far this year, but they are still a very good team, I think, very talented team. They made the ALCS last year. I think you're not going to see a soft, part of the schedule really probably until the Royals come to town. And even the Royals aren't necessarily a bad team. Like, you'll get this 6-game stretch against the Royals and Red Sox right before the All-Star break. But then, you're going to have the June and July schedule. I'm looking at it, and I see very few easy series on here. And I know, every team's going to say, well, no series is necessarily easy, but you have to capitalize on those 4 games against the Nationals, those 6 games against the Marlins, because you're going to have these, road trips, or there's these homestands like the one at the end of June against the Cubs and the Phillies. You're going to have those road trips like the one straight out of the All-Star break against the Phillies and the Brewers. Oh, and by the way, you come home and face the Dodgers and the Braves right after that. So, yeah, they have to get it going quickly because the schedule is not going to lighten up at all, like you were saying, Chris.
Yeah, and it's been real. You look at just kind of the way this season unfolded, not to have a funeral right now on May 11th after Mother's Day, but the part of their schedule came when they had to go out to the West Coast 4 times before Mother's Day. So, you could thank the schedule gods. You can look at all the injuries, and nobody's going to feel bad for you in Major League. And I, myself included, just from a fan perspective, you hate to lose interest in your baseball team in May, but there's been just so much that has gone wrong right from the get-go for this team. And yeah, I mean, these next 2 to 3 weeks are going to be very decisive for this 2026 ball club.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You got to do it ASAP. There's no time to wait. Your season is in the tank already. So if it's going to get worse, then you're leaving it, I guess. But if they want to try and do anything, it's got to be sooner than later. And the Braves, right? Injuries, suspensions, new manager, and, ho-hum, first place being the Braves. Really annoying. Hate how that happens. Hate the Braves. Must be nice. But, hey, listen. Tigers coming into town, like you mentioned. They got some injuries. They got guys that are, they're not playing with their full squad by any means. So, if the Mets are going to gain ground, like you guys are saying, it starts with the series with a team like this that's, coming in limping. Hopefully they're coming in limping more than the Mets, right? That's all you can hope at this point. So, we'll see what happens with that. We'll catch everybody after the Tigers series. But as always, keep the faith, keep watching, and let's go Mets, even when it's hard.